I'm Nick Palmisano.
And I'm Matt Finney.
And I'm thirsty.
And I'm Jake Hirsch.
And this is
the Bad News Network.
I know what you guys are thinking. Where's Nick and Matt, and why are you using this weird new microphone? Well, both those answers can be explained by the video you just saw. Nick and Matt decided to fly across the world in a humanitarian effort to save people, specifically Afghan refugees fleeing from the Taliban, so doing superhero stuff. Also, they took every good piece of equipment we have to document and film what they're doing over there. If you haven't heard, you might be living under a rock, but Joe Rogan is currently up against it versus cancel culture. Rogan has come under fire for a couple of reasons that have brought to light since signing with the streaming giant Spotify. The first issue being his opinions and views on the coronavirus and the vaccine. Many people are saying that him, as well as some of his guests on the show, are spreading misinformation about COVID and the vaccines that go with it. Artists Neil Young and Joni Mitchell both announced that they would be taking their music off Spotify to protest the company's support for Rogan. One thing to remember is that Rogan isn't a political figure or doctor and doesn't claim to be. He's a very successful podcast host who has accredited guests come onto a show and talk about a myriad of issues and topics. He isn't using this information to be malicious or further some sort of political agenda. He is a guy who's talking about current events with people who are versed in those fields. He himself doesn't claim to be an expert in any of these topics and can admit when he is wrong and has been proven wrong by guests on his show. If you don't think what he's saying is correct or don't like what he's saying, the easiest thing to do is turn off or unsubscribe from the show. That's the beauty of free speech. Just because someone says something you disagree with or that makes you uncomfortable doesn't mean they should be censored or canceled by the mob of pitch-wielding, torch-bearing Facebook warriors. To add to the current fire, people are now digging into the past of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast and pulling up anything negative they can that he has ever said to propagate their claims against him. The newest one is a compilation of clips of him using the N-word over the past decade. The video has about zero context and it shows Joe on multiple different episodes using the N-word with a slew of different guests. Rogan has posted a video to his Instagram stating his regret for ever using this word in any context over the years, saying that he thought when he was speaking in a certain context it was okay, but has now learned that it's absolutely not the case. Some people who supported Rogan during the COVID misinformation battle are now pulling their support after seeing these videos. This includes The Rock, Andrew Yang, and India Arya. Some of Rogan's friends, like athlete and motivational speaker David Goggins, have said that even though they are not okay with his use of the N-word, they do not see this as a cancelable offense. Spotify CEO, through heavy amounts of sweat, said that he stands with the podcast giant amid these controversies, but he and his company's views are not reflected by what has been said by Rogan. We will see what the mob pulls up next to try and cancel Rogan, but let's remember, this guy was telling people to bob for bull testicles and buckets of blood like 10 years ago.
Last week, we reported on the Freedom Convoy, but there have been plenty of details to update on this week. Jim Watson, the mayor of Ottawa, declared a state of emergency Sunday, reporting that the ongoing demonstrations are a threat to safety and security of local residents. Around 500 trucks are still lingering in the streets of the Canadian capital protesting the vaccine mandates. This declaration came soon after the Ottawa police threatened to arrest anyone who brings gasoline or other materials to support the truckers. Police did not expand specifically on what supporting materials meant, which possibly means that bringing food and water to the truckers could get you arrested, even though gasoline is essential to keeping the trucks running. Police are constituting this as a hazardous material to the public and represents a fire hazard. Currently, there is no law that says one Canadian can't give gas or food to another Canadian, so I'm not sure how this is going to be policed. Or Mountie. Gofundme is now being investigated for blocking funds to the Freedom Convoy. Originally, the company put a pause on the donation campaigns to see if the donations going to the Freedom Convoy meet their terms and conditions, but now have completely blocked donations to the campaign. When GoFundMe took down the page, they told anyone who donated that they could request a refund on their donation or let the Freedom Convoy choose a credible charity to put the money towards, but have since reversed that decision and refunded everyone's money to simplify the process. The reason for GoFundMe said that the campaign was taken down was because it was being used by a group that was promoting violence, even though the entire protest had been peaceful. There have been reports of violence and unlawful activity by police, but these can be tied to protesters outside the Freedom Convoy who have shown up to push their own beliefs. Now Republican leaders are calling for a congressional hearing and seeking more information on the decision by the company to block these donations. A Christian crowdfunding site called Give Send Go has also been blocked by an Ontario court after it raised millions of dollars for the convoy. Give Send Go raised over $8 million as of yesterday, but an application brought on by Ontario's Attorney General has prohibited the convoy from getting the money. It is weird that if these people were just handing this cash over to truckers, people would do literally nothing about it. But somehow, when a giant tech company or government entity gets involved, they are allowed to put their personal opinion in front of what is allowed. Is there a law that says I can't give money as a gift to someone? If so, my grandma, who has been sending me $14 in the mail for my birthday since I was 8, is screwed. Justin Trudeau, who has been hiding in a super cozy mansion on a ski slope somewhere, has come under fire for his comments on the truckers condemning the violence, while last year supporting the BLM protests in America where people were injured and even killed and multiple businesses were destroyed or burned to the ground, none of which has been reported from the Freedom Convoy. Ironically, many truckers and protesters are thanking Trudeau because of his intense COVID policies he has brought people together, mainly to hate him. We will continue to report on this story as the events unfold.
Wordle is the latest craze sweeping the nation. If you haven't played it or even heard of it, I'll give you a quick synopsis. It's a daily online game where you have 6 chances to guess a random 5-letter word. If you get a letter in the word correct but not in the right placement, the letter turns yellow. If you guess the letter right and it's in the right spot, the letter turns green. That is literally it. Some people, like one of my BNN co-correspondents Thomas Hunt, doesn't like to play this game because he hates joy and only knows like 3 5-letter words with one of them being bitch. I, on the other hand, love playing because I get to see the sweet sting of defeat that comes across everyone's face in the office when I guess the word in less tries than them. Here's a quick 5-letter words for you guys. Loser. Wait, S. Nice. The game was made during the pandemic by some dude in the UK. He made it so his girlfriend would have something to do during quarantine, which means she was bugging the shit out of him, and instead of just hanging out with her, he learned how to code so he didn't have to speak and now can do his job in peace. This week, Wordle went from fun online game to a life-saving tool. Denise Holt, an 80-year-old Chicago woman, was sleeping peacefully in her bed when a 32-year-old naked man climbed through the window and crept in her bed. James H. David III held Denise at scissor point and demanded that she take a bath with him. James was bloody from climbing through the broken window and freezing from the Chicago temperatures, so he thought the best course of action was to take a soak. After the bath, James dragged Denise around the home and disconnected all the phones while collecting all the knives in her house. Denise was scared for her life, so she complied with all of the intruder's demands, who said he wasn't going to hurt her or molest her, that he was just trying to survive. When the morning came, Denise's daughter Meredith was concerned after she did not receive a text from her mother that morning with her Wordle score for the day. Ironically, the word for that day was naked home intruder. Meredith contacted local police who responded to Holt's home at 9:40 p.m. the next night, so she had spent 17 hours being held hostage by this naked dude. SWAT arrived at the house and subdued James with a stun gun, and he's now being charged with aggravated kidnapping and aggravated assault. Hey James, here's a 5-letter word for where you're going. Prison.
COVID restrictions across the world are starting to be lifted. States across the U.S. have been lifting mask mandates for businesses and schools. California, New Jersey, and Delaware, among others, have outlined plans to lift statewide mask mandates. According to public health data compiled by the New York Times, new COVID-19 cases in the United States have gone down 62% over the past 2 weeks, partially due to the initial surge of cases that came up due to the holiday travel with the highly transmittable Omicron variant. In a poll conducted by Forbes, 21% of adults in the United States want the country to open back up completely with no mandates or requirements, while another 21% want more vaccine and mask requirements. Currently, the biggest vaccination campaign is underway, with more than 10 billion doses being administered across 184 countries, which is roughly 25 million doses per day. This number includes about 6.5 million people getting their first dose of the vaccine. Scientists are predicting that with this current pace, it'll take another 5 months until 75% of the population will have received at least 1 dose. With the amount of vaccinated individuals going up, even countries with the harshest mandates are slowly letting up. For the first time in 2 years, Australia has announced plans to reopen its borders to vaccinated tourists and other visa holders. This means people can go back to looking at kangaroos, drinking Fosters, and walking the trail to Mount Doom. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has outlined plans to lift the remaining COVID restrictions in the UK a month earlier than planned. I'm not sure if this is actually for the people or because Boris is currently fighting to save his job and was seen at parties without a mask during a time when restrictions prohibited people from doing so. But that's just how the life of a politician works, right? Standard practice, I'm sure. Boris could just be lifting restrictions because he has the urge to show people his killer new dance moves. The World Health Organization has recommended for countries to lift or ease up on any existing COVID-related travel restrictions such as masking, testing, isolation, and quarantine in order to lessen the financial burden on international travelers. A new study by the United Nations World Tourism Organization showed that there was a slight increase in global tourism during 2021, but the full impact of the Omicron variant has yet to be seen. I'm thinking that people spent all their money on random they saw on TikTok and Facebook during the beginning of the pandemic, and the second they got vaccinated, they wanted to take a vacation away from the people they had spent a year in isolation with.
Oh, Russia. The land of vodka, snow, and super pasty white people. Also home of the current Dr. Evil level supervillain Vladimir Putin. Putin has been massing military forces on the Russia-Ukraine border for some time now, which he is saying is just for funsies, but the rest of the world knows it is for something far more nefarious. It is projected that around 140,000 Russian troops line the border of the Ukraine while adding his force capability in Belarus. Thousands of Russian troops begin 10 days of training exercises with Belarus on the purpose of working on the task of suppressing and repelling external aggression. Sounds pretty aggressive to me. Officials in the Ukraine have warned of Russian naval drills that will take place largely in the Black Sea and could possibly disrupt shipping lines and commercial routes. How nice. NATO is currently worried that after the drill ends on February 20th, the troops won't pack up and go home and instead join their comrades on the Ukraine border. French President Macron met with Putin this week to negotiate options for stabilizing the region, but after talking for 5 hours, no headway was made. During his trip to the Kremlin, Macron refused to take a COVID test supplied by the Kremlin with the fear that Putin would use it to get his DNA. Possibly to make a Macron clone to take over France, or to make like a mini-me style butler to follow him around all day. I mean, I would also have said no. Who knows what Putin's up to? It's not like he has a history of poisoning people he doesn't like. After the meeting, Macron stated that the tension is increasing, and so is the risk of destabilization. Macron also said that Russia nor the Europeans want chaos or instability, even though that seems like exactly what Putin wants. Putin said that he would consider some of the proposals that Macron laid down, but this seems at most like a veiled attempt at confluence. Efforts to resolve the ongoing crisis are scheduled to continue, but I think we can all assume that Putin will keep on Putin-ing. Putinizing. Doing the Putin. Whatever. Just generally being evil and stuff.
Support animals have become a bigger thing these days. Not sure if there's an actual need for them, or if people are just becoming increasingly more sensitive and need an animal by their side so they don't freak out and have a manic episode in public. I've seen dudes with golden retrievers in Costco, and a woman flying with an emotional support cat that turned out to be a taxidermied version of her now dead cat that she was breastfeeding on a plane. The second thing sounds fake, but I promise it was real. Go YouTube it. I promise it's worth 3 minutes and 47 seconds. I know people need these animals, but it sucks because all I want to do is pet them when I see them, but I know that would rewire their brains and turn them back into a normal animal and not a 37-year-old's living stuffed animal. But out of all the animals I've seen or heard of, Ellie might be the most interesting. She is a 110-pound potbelly pig who emotionally supports Wyvern Flat. Wyvern, yikes. Sounds like a dude that needs to have an emotional support pig. Wyvern is in the middle of a legal battle to keep a support pig, who police say is a farm animal which is currently prohibited in his village illegally. Wyvern says that Ellie helped him to get through his divorce and the death of his mother, but that arguably could have been the reason for his divorce. Ladies, are you going to go home with a dude who has a pig as a roommate? God, I hope so, because my potbelly pig Stewie isn't going anywhere. Wyvern has also stated that Ellie has helped him get off medication, but since there's no actual proof, like a doctorate or some degree that the pig would have to have, this case could be headed back to criminal court. Wyvern is going to continue to fight to keep his pig regardless of any violations he may face. He's gotten attention from pig partisans, which I had no idea was a thing, and has even gotten his neighbors to sign papers saying they enjoy Ellie. Like I said before, I have a potbelly pig, and honestly, he's kind of a dick. He bites me out of pure pleasure and regularly eats trash just to projectile vomit all over my room. Pigs might make good friends, but I promise you, they make even better bacon.
And finally, in Florida Man news, this week a man in Florida was clearly bored of playing Grand Theft Auto on PlayStation and decided to bring the experience to real life. Bradford Whitesell was having trouble finding his car after a night of drinking. It happens to the best of us. But instead of calling an Uber or phoning a friend, Bradford decided to do something much more Florida. After searching for his vehicle for a little bit, he thought the best course of action would be to steal another car to help him find his own. Perfect plan. Drive around a little bit, play some tunes, hopefully find your car, and then just park this one and head home. This would actually create a pretty interesting Florida paradox where that car owner would then have to steal another car, and then that car owner would have to do the same thing, and so on and so forth until everyone was driving someone else's car. Like a giant game of musical vehicles. While on the desperate search for his vehicle, the car Bradford was in became stuck on some train tracks. During his attempt to clear the car from the tracks, Bradford noticed that a train was headed in his direction. He made the decision to quickly exit the vehicle seconds before it was yeeted off the tracks by the train. Unfortunately for some unsuspecting homeowners, the vehicle was thrown into the side of their house by the train. With his options running out, Bradford saw a small fruit stand which he vandalized. I'm not sure if this was to help him find his vehicle, or maybe he was just parched or had scurvy. Whether it was to continue the search for his vehicle or to get that other car out of the house, Bradford then attempted to steal a forklift, which drives about 2 miles an hour. At this point, police were aware of the situation and were en route to Bradford's position. Luckily for police, Bradford was not hard to track down as he waved them down himself as they arrived on the scene. When police came up to him asking him what was going on, he was relieved that someone was finally there to help him find his car. Unfortunately for him, police were more concerned about this whole stolen car vehicle that was chucked into a house. Bradford probably should have used the up, down, left, right, left triangle square cheat code to clear his notoriety. Bradford is currently being charged with Grand Theft Auto and criminal mischief. No one was injured during the situation, but the homeowners now have a sweet new parking spot in their house. And with that, I'm Alex Pokey.
And I'm Jake Hirsch.
And this is the Bad News Network. Our news is at least as bad as the news you're getting already. And don't worry, Nick and Matt will be soon, so you won't have to look at this ugly mug for another week. As always, you can get 25% off your purchase at rangerup.com by using the code BNN. And of course, check out Nick and Matt on OnlyFans at Nick and Matt. Have a great weekend, folks.